Alice Springs, Northern Territory, Australia, April 25th, 2026, a Saturday night. A 5-year-old girl visiting family at a town camp on the southern outskirts of town. At 11 p.m., she was seen holding hands with a man she knew, a distant relative staying in the same home. At 1:30 a.m., her family reported her missing. 5 days later, her body was found near the banks of Todd River, 5 kilometers away from where she was taken. She was 5 years old. Her name was Sharon Granitz, and in accordance with the cultural practices of her people, the Warlpiri, her family asked that she be remembered as Kumanjayi Little Baby. This is her story. Sharon Granitz was a Warlpiri girl born to a large and well-known Central Australian family. She was 5 years old. She could not talk. She communicated mostly through hand gestures. She was raised by a single mother and extended family after her father was imprisoned. They moved frequently before settling at the Warlpiri Old-Timers, a small town camp of 9 houses on the southern outskirts of Alice Springs, about 6 kilometers from the town centre. Her extended family included well-known Central Australian artists and politicians. Her family was connected, known, and loved within the community. The home she spent her final days in was in a state of severe dilapidation. A mattress on the living room, graffiti on the walls, empty bottles of Jim Beam in the kitchen. Despite Old-Timers being a designated dry camp where alcohol is prohibited, windows missing, beds set up in the front yard for the overflow of people staying there. A journalist who entered the home afterwards was led through it by Elder Robin Granitz. "This is what they will learn from us," he said. This was the world Kumanjayi Little Baby was born into, not through any fault of her own, not through any fault of her mother's love, but through a cycle of poverty, overcrowding, and systemic neglect that has existed in communities like this one for decades. Jefferson Lewis was a 47-year-old Warlpiri man, originally from the remote community of Lajamanu in the Northern Territory. He had an extensive criminal record, multiple serious assaults, domestic violence offences, breaches of bail, a pattern of escalating violence against people close to him, stretching back over a decade. In October 2024, he was sentenced to 18 months in prison for aggravated assault, domestic violence offences, and breaching bail. His sentence was later extended by 3 months for further offences committed while inside. He was released from prison on April 19, 2026, 6 days before Kumanjayi Little Baby was taken. Upon his release, he was directed to return to family in Lajamanu. A request to live in the community of Yundimu was denied. Community members there had raised concerns about him, so he traveled to Alice Springs. He moved into the Warlpiri Old-Timers camp, the same camp where Kumanjayi and her mother were visiting. He stayed in several different dwellings. Residents later said he had been acting strangely in the days before the incident, unusually quiet, drinking heavily. On the night of April 25, 2026, 6 days after walking out of prison, he was seen holding hands with a 5-year-old girl who could not speak. She was never seen alive again. At 1:30 a.m. on April 26th, Kumanjayi's family reported her missing. What followed was one of the largest search operations in Northern Territory history. Northern Territory Police launched an immediate investigation. Around 300 volunteers joined the search. Police covered approximately 5 square kilometers on foot and 80 square kilometers by vehicle and air. Later on April 26th, the same day the search began, police made a discovery in the dry bed of the Todd River. Lewis's shirt, children's underwear, a doona cover, A crime scene was declared at that site. Forensic testing found traces of both Kumanjayi's and Lewis's DNA on the underwear. An arrest warrant was issued for Jefferson Lewis immediately, but Lewis was gone. What followed was described by Northern Territory Police as one of their biggest ever manhunts. Lewis had almost no digital footprint, no phone, no social media, no trail to follow. Police door-knocked areas throughout Alice Springs. They searched remote communities across the Northern Territory and into Western Australia. Reports emerged that family members may have assisted him in evading capture. For 5 days, Lewis moved through the landscape while hundreds of people searched for a 5-year-old girl who communicated through hand gestures and had never hurt anyone in her life. On April 30th, 5 days after she was taken, a search party found Kumanjayi Little Baby's body near the banks of the Todd River, 5 kilometers from the home she had been taken from. Police treated her death as a homicide. A cause of death was not immediately disclosed. On the same day her body was found, Lewis was located at the Charles Creek Town Camp on the outskirts of Alice Springs. He did not surrender to police. He was found being beaten unconscious by residents of the camp. NT Police Commissioner Martin Dole described what happened plainly. Members of that town camp decided to inflict vigilante justice upon Jefferson, and we received numerous phone calls saying he was in the process of being assaulted. Lewis had received an extensive head injury and was rendered unconscious by the time emergency services arrived. Police and ambulance officers moved into an ambulance, but they were attacked as they did so. Around 200 people were present. Lewis was taken to Alice Springs Hospital. What happened next was 5 hours of chaos. A crowd of approximately 400 people gathered outside Alice Springs Hospital demanding Lewis be handed over for payback under customary law. Rocks, bottles, projectiles thrown at police and their vehicles. A police car was set on fire. 4 out of 5 ambulances at the hospital were rendered inoperable. Riot police deployed tear gas and rubber bullets. Lewis was transferred to Darwin Hospital for his own safety. The following day, Kumanjayi's family appealed for calm. They said justice would be served by the police and judicial system. They said, "To Kumanjayi Little Baby, me, Ramisa, miss and love you. I know you are in heaven with the rest of the family. We are giving our lives to Jesus. It is going to be so hard to live the rest of our lives without you. Ramsiah wants to tell you that when he sees you in heaven, he's going to give you the biggest hug. Love from Mum and Ramsiah." Charges against Lewis were expected to be laid on May 2nd, 2026. Northern Territory Chief Minister Leah Finocchio described him as a monster. Kumanjayi Little Baby's death broke the nation, but it also forced a conversation that has been avoided for too long. Senator Jacinta Price, whose own extended family has connections to the old-timers camp, wrote about what she had witnessed there over years. These are not new observations. The town camp now at the center of this case is one I know well. It is a place where I have lost family. A niece was stabbed to death there. Another child in my extended family was killed in an accident at the front of that same camp. She called for an independent inquiry, not just into this case, but into the broader conditions that allowed such vulnerability to persist. 2 camps across Alice Springs are home to over 1,000 permanent residents across 16 communities. They were established out of necessity, born from discriminatory policies that prevented Aboriginal people from freely entering Alice Springs for decades. The old people fought for land tenure. They built communities from nothing. But the conditions inside many of those communities today are a crisis: overcrowding, inadequate housing, alcohol flowing into designated dry areas, people with serious criminal histories moving freely between camps. Jefferson Lewis was released from prison 6 days before Kumanjayi was taken. He was directed to go elsewhere. Communities had already raised concerns about him. He ended up at the same camp as a 5-year-old girl who could not call for help. National Commissioner for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Children, Sue Ann Hunter, called for a wider investigation into the correctional systems that led to his release. The question of how a man with Lewis's record was released and ended up in proximity to vulnerable children is one that demands an answer. There are cases that break your heart because they are unexpected. This is not one of them. This is a case that breaks your heart because it was preventable, because the warning signs were there, because people raised concerns about Jefferson Lewis before he ever set foot in that camp, because a system released a man with a decade of escalating violence onto the streets, and 6 days later, a 5-year-old girl was dead. Kumanjayi Little Baby communicated through hand gestures. She couldn't call for help. She couldn't scream a name. She couldn't tell anyone what was happening to her. Her mother's statement said it all. Ramsiah wants to tell you that when he sees you in heaven, he's going to give you the biggest hug ever. Sharon Granitz was 5 years old. She deserved to grow up. She deserved a safe home, a safe community, a safe night. She deserved everything that was taken from her. Rest in peace, Kumanjayi Little Baby. This has been The Unknown Files. Cases like this hit very close to the heart. Kumanjayi Little Baby deserved to live. She didn't deserve to die. She didn't deserve to be tortured. Rest in peace, little girl.